Alive, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in our beautiful Facebook world. Thank you for joining us for today's Shining the Light on Our Community. And we've got a very special guest with a wonderful, heart-touching topic and heart-touching story. Yarona, thank you for joining us. Yarona Boster, all the way from New Jersey, talking about how loss and parenting are intricately connected, which is definitely an interesting conversation. But Yarona, let me introduce you for all our listeners, first of all. So you're a certified life coach specializing in parent coaching. You don't hear too much about parent coaches. There's lots of life coaches and money coaches and everything else coaches, business coaches. But parent coaching, love to know more about that. And you're a member of the International Coaching Federation. And prior to this, you worked in the field of early childhood for 15 years. Wonderful. You're a TEDx speaker. Love to know a little bit about that too. We've got lots to talk about and so much more. And you're also releasing your parenting book, Unspoken Signals, Essential Parenting Skills to Raise Empathetic Children. Please do come back for that when that is launched. So, Yarona, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really, really thank you. And let's just start. Let's just get to know a little bit about you, first of all, and what drew you into your whole area of helping parents, parenting coaching, and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, something that I realized a very long time ago was that, biology gives us the capability, the capacity to bring new life into this world. But there is no society on this planet that requires people to read a book or take a basic child development class to learn how to be a stable, healthy parent before they ever actually become one. And, I once was talking to my husband about it. He said, it's so funny. You have to get a license to drive a car, but anybody could have a child.
Yes,
and,
without.
And it's sort of like we do this whole thing called humanity and life and living. And we forget that one of the most important roles that most people will ever play in life is the role of a parent.
Yep.
We think about our jobs and we think about our purpose and our passions and, our relationships and everything. But the role of a parent is one of the most human roles possible. And I think one of the reasons we don't separate it out is because we have this idea that, it's just a part of life. Yeah. But the truth is, so many people I've met over the course of the work that I've done don't know the first thing about basic child development. Mm. And it makes me very sad because we learn when children go to school, they learn about reading, they learn about writing, they learn about their ABCs, they learn about all of these things, but they don't learn about themselves as a human just developing in the world. And so often where I came from in the world of early childhood, I specifically worked with children birth to 3 with developmental delays and disabilities. And when you meet parents in that world, they are coming to the world of children with disabilities with this idea of like, why is my child not developing the way they should? And more often than not, when you start to have conversations with them, you start to realize, well, they don't even know the basics of child development to learn what their children should be doing and where the bases are to be able to actually run all those bases and make it home safely. So I started to have very different conversations with both my staff and the parents that I was working with. And as a result, I came to realize that we need to have one of the most basic functions of a thriving society be a part of the knowledge of development, of human development. you know.
Yeah.
You shouldn't,
Yes.
and you shouldn't be going into that, when people think about, oh, what career do I want to, oh, well, okay, I want to be a teacher, or I want to be a psychologist and things like that. That's when you start to learn about human development. That's when you start to learn about the intricacies of the basic early childhood domains of early childhood development. But we should be learning about that well beforehand. And I'm not even talking about reproduction. I'm talking about once the child is there, what happens next, right? Because a lot of people don't want to talk about reproduction. I do, but a lot of people don't.
Yes.
Okay, so skip reproduction. Let's talk about what happens when your child is actually here and in the world. Why is it important for you to make eye contact with your baby? Why is it more important for you to make that eye contact than it is for you to put your phone in front and go and be recording your child? Right? I know it's wonderful and I know it's lovely to capture those moments, but it's much more impactful to capture the eye contact between
Yes.
you and your child.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely it would be. And thank you for sharing that. And I love what you're saying because it's so true. I mean, we live in a world where, we're taught how to count, and we're taught, we're taught a lot of stuff that we don't need to know, unless you want to specialize in a certain field. But we're not taught about life skills, and especially becoming a parent.
yeah.
And for some people, it is a wonderful journey, and it's thought out and it's planned, and they do learn about everything that involves becoming a parent before they take that actual step. But for a lot of people, it can be quite a sudden thing.
Yes.
That they're not prepared for. And so I just want to thank you and honor you for bringing this awareness to the world and helping people, who are parents or want to become parents or anything like that, to learn that it is a skill.
It is.
It's
a skill and it's a role. It's not
Yes.
your only role in life, and it's not your only purpose. And if you don't want to be a parent, there's nothing stopping you from having purpose.
Yes.
I think one of the things that I learned through 10 years of infertility struggles was that I had a greater purpose here in the world, regardless of whether or not I had children. And it took me a really long time to realize that. And it took a conversation that I had with my sister and something that she said to me, essentially saying that, one of the things most parents get wrong is that they make their children their purpose in life.
Yes.
And they forget that as a parent, your role is really just to be a guiding light. Your role is just to be a shepherd. It's not to create life and to mold it the way you see it should be. It's just to guide the autonomous person who you've brought into this world and to let them find their own path and their own purpose.
Yes.
So as a person, we have a finite time here. And the other lesson that I learned through my life was loss.
Yes.
Repeatedly over my life, loss was a constant and has been a constant, and it has been a recent constant with the loss of my brother. I've lost so many people in my life. And as I continuously saw loss, I also started to see how it actually shapes the role of parenting. One thing that I would get a lot from my staff, they would come to me and they would say, Yarona, this parent isn't listening to me. It doesn't matter what I say. They're just not listening. They don't understand why it's important to do X, Y, and Z, and why I can't just come in and teach their children something, why they have to model it, and why their child isn't just going to absorb something magically. It's a part of what's in their environment that it makes all the difference. And they couldn't understand why setting boundaries is important, why giving your children rules and no, and instilling an understanding of life's natural boundaries was so important. And I realized that a part of that is because most people don't want to face loss.
Yes.
Loss is the most inevitable boundary of life that we all come in contact with. And what I realized was I had this light bulb moment when in the world that I come from, we would go into the homes and we would actually do the meetings in the homes with the parents and their toddlers. This is children birth to 3. And I walked in one day and the 2-year-old was climbing the drapes. He was literally climbing the drapes.
Yeah.
And I turned to the mother and I said, "Are you okay with this?" And she looked at me and she said, "Well, what can I do? I don't want to tell him no. I don't want him to feel like inhibited and restricted. I want him to feel like the sky's the limit." And I thought about that and I understood in that moment what she was saying, especially for a child with a developmental delay or disability. Parents have this guilt that's layered over that, and they want to make sure that their children don't feel restricted. They want to make sure that their children feel like they could do anything and anything is possible. And while anything is possible, everything isn't.
Mm.
Because as a human being, we have natural limitations. So I said to her, "Okay, I understand where you're coming from. So in your opinion, when your child is old enough to go skydiving, would you be okay with that?" And she said, "Well, yeah, if that's what he wants to do, yeah, absolutely. Why not? Sure. He should be able to go skydiving if he wants to." I said, "Okay. What if he wanted to go skydiving without a parachute?" And she looked at me like I was crazy, but she said, "Okay." And I think she started to get it. And I said, "Because here's the thing, you can't go skydiving without a parachute unless you want that to be the last thing you do. You can't cross the street and get hit by a car and just keep on walking. You can't jump from the roof of your house and just, be
Get up
perfectly
and keep on
fine.
walking.
Life has natural boundaries and limitations.
Yes.
And loss is an inevitable boundary and limitation. And as parents, it's our role to start by teaching our children safety. Why do we teach them safety? Because they can't just cross the street without looking both ways, because they don't want to get hit by a car, right? So we start with safety. We start with teaching our children what to be fearful of, what to worry about, how to protect themselves and their security. And what happens as a result, though, is we teach them that, but then we also start to teach them about societal boundaries and limitations, and then interpersonal boundaries and limitations, and then teaching them to raise their own awareness of their personal boundaries and limitations means they will be most successful in life because they will create natural safety nets for themselves. So they will have their own natural securities and boundaries that they can fall back on, with an understanding that when somebody tells you no, your whole world doesn't have to fall apart, because that is a boundary that's being set in front of you. And that means that you will just find another path to walk along, and that's okay. But here's the thing that gets me time and time again. And I ask parents to do this with me every time. And I'll ask any parents out there to do this. What is one thing you want to know before you leave this world? As a parent, what is one thing you want to know? And without fail, the answers are inevitably somewhere around this idea of, well, I want to know my loved ones and my children will be okay without me. Okay. Then you have to start parenting with that end goal in mind. When I was with my brother's kids, seeing what they were going through, seeing their loss, seeing the loss of their father affect them because that final string was cut. That support system of having him there is no longer there. Now, you can hold somebody in your heart, really close to your heart, always and forever. But I can never pick up the phone and call my mother anymore. I can't pick up the phone and call my father and get their unique take and their unique perspective on how I'm raising my child. I can't get their unique words that would come out of their mouth. I can imagine what they would say, but I'm an orphan now. I don't have them to call. So I can hold them in my heart and hope that their guidance that they took me on until I no longer had them is going to be enough to get me through the next stages. And I think that so many parents do their children a disservice when they don't accept that loss is inevitable and they don't prepare for the loss that they will inevitably face for their children.
Absolutely. And it's so very true, because I mean, as you say, you know, we all experience loss. You know, loss is that final boundary, and that can be at any time. Yeah. Absolutely any time. So, you know, I would assume that at the right age, then, you know, it is a good idea to start to prepare children for that loss, you know, because even loss of pets,
yes,
you know, loss of friends when you have to move, everything else.
You're hitting upon the thing that I call foundational losses.
Yes.
So I developed this theory that I call foundational losses. And at every stage in life, you have a loss. Even when a child is young, the losses are usually small when they're young, like the loss of a toy because it broke. Their favorite toy broke, and they're no longer going to be able to play with that favorite toy. Even what's very interesting about kids is you could replace that exact toy, but it won't be the exact toy for them. And they'll know it's not.
Yeah.
How do you help them process that? The loss of a good grade, even though they studied hard. Not getting into an after-school program they wanted, not getting into the college they wanted, not, you know, losing a relationship, losing a home, losing a job. These are all losses that we all encounter. And as parents, it's not your job to shield your children from those losses. It's not your job to bubble wrap your child and hold them even closer and tighter to you to make sure they don't have those. It's your job to help nurture their capability and ability to face those losses on their own. So we do it in small, measurable ways. Before my son turned 4, we lost our cat. And I knew it was coming. I saw it happening. She was 19 and she was his sister, and he loved her, and he picked her up and walked all over the house with her. And she adored him and he adored her. But I knew it was coming. So I had a choice. I could help him and help prepare him for that loss. Or I could try to figure out a way to shield him from it and pretend it wasn't really happening. Yeah. And then get a new pet in preparation so that, he'll be fine. He won't worry about it. Or tell him a lie. Tell him, she has to go and be with the doctor because there's a special thing that's going to happen and you know. No, I didn't do any of that. I bought a couple of really important books, including a book by Mr. Rogers, When a Pet Dies. And we read these books together and we talked about it. And we talked about how Kitty was going to be gone. And he asked me, will she come back? And I said, no, she won't. Mm-hmm. And he said, Mommy, that hurts me. That I'm sad. And I had a choice to sit with a double dose of pain, not just my pain at losing our cat, but my pain as a parent watching him suffer through that pain. Yeah. And I chose to have that and take the ownership of those two pains on me rather than try to band-aid the pain for him, which I knew wasn't going to be okay. It wasn't going to be sufficient. So we processed it together. And every once in a while, he would bring her up. And he still does. He's 5 now. But he still every once in a while says, I miss Kitty. And I tell him I do too. And we get comfortable with the pain and the discomfort of our suffering. Yeah. Because it's not okay, but that's okay. You know, one of the things that I find to be some of the hardest things for people to face is watching somebody else they love suffer. And something that other people, when they're mourning, they go through is people throwing words at them that are meaningless and trite, and sometimes even dismissive of the pain and suffering. Like, oh, it'll be okay. It happened for a reason. God has greater plans. We don't always understand this. This too shall pass.
Yes.
And these words that are meaningless, when the truth is, you can simply say to somebody, I hope one day this pain will lessen. I hope one day it'll be okay. I know you're hurting right now, and I have no good words for you, but I'm here for you, and I'll hold your hand, and I'll be here, whatever you need. Because I think that's one of the hardest things. And as a parent, again, watching your kids suffer, nobody wants to do that, but it's inevitable.
It is.
And you do your kids a disservice too by not just incapacitating their ability to process loss and move on successfully in life, but you also do them a disservice by saying to them, you're not resilient enough to deal with this. I'm going to take care of it for you. And that's not okay either. Yeah.
No, because it's taking away the power from your child.
Yeah.
It's taking away their experience, even though it may be, a painful experience. It's something that we all have to go through.
Yeah.
And that we all have to grow by and stuff. So I get that. So, thank you so very much for sharing that, because it is such an important part of life and an incredibly essential part of parenting. I see now how, talking about how loss and parenting are really connected, because as we're talking about, there is so many different types of loss that our children in general are not prepared for.
That is true. That is true.
I'll
tell you, for me, I think about 5 specific things that we can think about when we're on this road. The first and most important thing is you have to be able to recognize, accept, and encourage your child's autonomy.
Yes.
They are their own person. They're not a blank slate when they're born. They actually are born with a whole host of different things in their DNA that will make up who they are. And so you have to recognize, accept it, and then encourage their autonomy so that at every step when they're walking through life, they understand that you're there. Yes, you're there supporting them, but inevitably they'll be walking that path at some point on their own. I like to think about it like this. My son, so he's 5. And when I walk him to school, we get to a certain point, and one day he turned to me, and I used to walk him all the way to the door. And one day he turned to me and goes, Mommy, I got this. And I was like, okay, go ahead. And I'm watching him walk. And then he turned back and he looked at me and he smiles and he goes, and while a part of me wanted to rush up and go like, yay, I was also so proud of him taking that step on his own.
Yeah.
It's actually harder for us as parents to let go than it ever is for our kids too.
For children.
They want to let go first.
Yeah, totally. We're the ones that hold on to them. Yeah.
We hold on a lot harder. And the second thing that's so important is that every person has their own emotional responses and therefore their own emotional coping mechanisms.
Yes.
So if we recognize our child's autonomy, we realize that they're going to cope with things differently than we do. So the best thing you can do is explore those coping mechanisms that will work and explore the ones that don't work.
Mm.
You won't know until you start exploring with them, and they won't know until they start exploring it. So like, for instance, for me, when I'm getting really upset about something, sometimes I just need to take a moment on my own to be alone or to walk away from the situation. Sometimes I need to do a couple of breathing exercises. For my son, when he's angry and frustrated, he needs to punch a pillow. He needs to kind of have an outlet to get it out in a healthy way, you know? But if breathing works for me and it's not working for him, I can't keep telling him to try breathing, right? So exploring those emotional coping mechanisms, so important. And number 3, trial and error. As humans, we're ever evolving, we're ever changing, we're constantly in a state of growth and change. So sometimes what works for us at one stage doesn't really work for us at another stage, you know? When I was younger, I did need more explosive, like exercise and energetic explosions, you know? Now I need more peace, more calm. And my son needs the same changes, and he'll change along the way. So trial and error, trial and error. It's always trial and error. And number 4, mistakes are inevitable. And they're the most important learning tool. And if we don't acknowledge mistakes, they're actually the truest essence of human beings. It's the being human is all about making mistakes and learning from them. But if we can't acknowledge them first, we're just going to be doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again. So one of the things I do with my son, I humanize myself to him by owning my mistakes in front of him. So important. And I could talk on about that for ages. And just the last thing, which really kind of comes right back to loss, is this saying, prepare the child for the road, not the road for the child. Because we don't know what the road is going to look like. So we can't prepare every moment of it for them.
No, but as much as we can, the road, the turns, the things that are going to come up, and especially for loss, because one, you know, it's going to happen. Yeah. All the different types of losses, and it can happen at any stage. It's one of these things, I think, in general, even as adults, people put off talking about, you know, death and dying and all that stuff, and then, oh, that's not going to happen to me yet. That's down the track. That's way down there, you know. And yet it can happen at any second. And as you know, even those who are closest to us, it can happen to us. So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for bringing in this, you know, this idea, the concept that loss and parenting are connected, and, you know, to slowly bring about, I guess, the education, the awareness of people in the world that, you know, being a parent is not something that comes, I was going to say it's not something that comes naturally, right, but it's something that can be enhanced and learned and developed.
Yes.
And one of those things is learning all about, you know, loss, yeah, and how that affects how that affects children in, yeah, all different ways.
And you're still going to make mistakes.
And we're still going to make mistakes.
You're still going to make mistakes because we're all human.
Part of life.
One thing I will tell you as a quote unquote parent expert,
yeah,
I'm not perfect.
Yes.
And if you find somebody who tells you, I know all the tricks, they're probably not telling you the truth.
Yes.
Because there are no all tricks.
All tricks.
There aren't no tricks. It's just about being human.
Yeah, it is. And I love that. It's just about being human. So thank you very much. Now, for everyone who is watching, we have had a few people watching, we will be putting your links in the comments as soon as we finish everywhere. But before we go, Yarona, can you just leave us anything else that you would like to share with everyone who's watching either the live and the replay about how we can, you know, bring loss into our parenting so it doesn't affect children in such a huge way?
Start by acknowledging the emotions, the hardest emotions of all, and accepting that there is no easy fix for those emotions. But acknowledgement, awareness, and building in those coping mechanisms are the most important thing that you could do to gain a greater awareness that the hardships of life are inevitable. Nobody ever said life was fair. It's not about fairness. It's about humanity. And be your most real self with your child. Because if you cannot be your real self, your child won't be able to do it either.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you ever so much. I love that. Just to be your real self and allow that to spread through with children and everything else. Thank you, Yarona. It's been a real honor. And I truly would, we haven't even started to cover your book. Please come back when your book is out and let's talk about that and everything else, because, time is limited. We like to keep it short, but that's because I love to talk to you again and again and
Absolutely.
again. All right.
And you can find my TEDx talk on my website.
Yes, and we will be putting all your links in the comments very, very, very soon. So thank you for joining us today, Yarona. It has been an honor, like I said, and a pleasure. And I really do hope that we're able to chat again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Yes. Be well. Thank you.